Hi, I'm Charlie White, and today I'm going to show you how to replace your roof tank bullcock or float valve. You'll know if your float valve is faulty because you'll find water dripping through the overflow pipe from your water tank. Although mine isn't dripping right now, it's been dripping intermittently for the last month or so now, so I do need to sort it out. Okay, in today's toolkit I've got a new float valve. This is a Pegler Part 2 float valve. You can pick these up for about £7 including VAT from places like Screwfix, but details of all today's tools will be available in the description at the end of the video. I've also got a new plastic float ball. Not essential because the chances are you can reuse the ball float on your existing float valve unless it's a really old-fashioned copper one, in which case you probably want to throw it away. I've got some slip joint pliers and I've also got an adjustable spanner. And finally, when I'm working in dark or confined spaces, I find a head torch really useful, particularly if your loft doesn't have lighting. You could repair your existing float valve, but when float valves are this inexpensive, I think it's just as easy to buy a new one. So this is my existing float valve, which you can clearly see is dripping away. So the first step is I've got to switch off the mains cold water feed into the valve. Luckily I've got a ball valve in the cupboard below the water tank, so I can simply turn this to horizontal to switch off the water supply. If you haven't got one of these, what you'll need to do is find out where the mains water's coming into your house at the stopcock and switch that off before you start working on the float valve in the tank. Okay, you can test to make sure you've properly switched off the water by pressing the float valve down. You can see here no water's coming out, so it's safe for us now to remove the existing valve. First job today in this incredibly cramped space I'm in, I hope you can see it clearly on the video, is I've got to remove the nut here on the float valve. So using my slip joint pliers to keep the whole float valve from moving, I'm just gonna get the adjustable spanner on the nut and slowly remove it. Right, that's loose now, so I can remove it, the rest of it by hand. There we go, and away it comes. Okay, I've now got the new float valve. There's no need to replace this whole unit here. Your life would be much easier if you literally just use the existing nut and just put the new float valve onto it. So I'm carefully unscrewing the float valve. That's the important thing. That rubber washer needs to be there when you unite it with the nut. Okay, and I'm now going to just start to hand screw the new float valve in place. The little plastic overflow attachment is removable. If you can, it's a good idea to remove it before you tighten the float valve. I can't do that because when I tighten this float valve, I won't then be able to turn the attachment around, so I'm going to leave that in place. So now I'm just going to gradually tighten up the nut on the back of the float valve. Feel it getting tight now. Just going to give it another couple of quarter turns just until it feels reassuringly tight. Okay, so the float valve's in place. All that remains for me to do now is to attach the ball float and then adjust the little screw on the float valve itself to get the right height for the ball float. I'm going to set this at a fairly low position to start with, just to ensure that the float valve is doing its job. Make sure it's nice and tight, because you don't want it coming loose. Okay, back in the bathroom again. We just need to turn the water back on the ball valve. And go and have a look up in the loft, see how the new float valve's performing. Okay, I've switched the water back on and I'm just double checking how the flow valve is working before putting the lid back on the tank. I want there to be a healthy distance between the top of the water and the overflow pipe. When you do this, if you find that the flow valve isn't kicking in quickly enough, you can make some adjustments. You can lower the ball float itself, and then you can slightly adjust the float valve operation itself by bending the brass float arm. Okay, and I'm pretty happy with that. In a couple of minutes time those drips will have stopped. We've got a nice healthy gap, probably about 50 mil between the top of the water and the overflow pipe, so I'm really happy with that. So I really hope you found this video useful. As ever, you can find details of all the tools I've used in the video in the description at the end. And if you like what you've seen today, please subscribe to my channel by clicking on the link here. I am so ready to come out of that loft.